All right, we are here with another First Impressions. I'm excited to see more product, have more conversations about things that are going to help publishers make more revenue and be successful in the future. This is actually John is someone who's done this before, right? So we've done a First Impressions before, and things have changed, things have evolved. But before we get into the product itself, you've had some thoughts and thinking a lot about publishers, software, services. Again, I think your company's evolving, but I think you're seeing that the whole space is evolving. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me back. Love the Beeler.Tech community, and being a part of it's great. So yeah, thank you for having us, and happy to share my thoughts. I mean, honestly, I think this might be a little bit of a, not not a common thought, but I think it's very exciting time to be in publisher advertising technology. I think not to use too strong of a word, but I think there's a real revolution going on in terms of software in earnest being available to publishers. I think, the big pain point that online publishing has had for a long time is that, the big software platforms that came about, i.e. Google and Facebook, were really earning the lion's share of advertising revenue. Meanwhile, really what makes the internet great is the ability for publishers to operate independently. Independent publishing on the web has always been amazing. And honestly, Ben Smith, sort of the, probably the most marquee media reporter there is today, just had an interesting piece coming out about how intent-based, or what I would even call niche independent publishing on the internet is poised for a renaissance. And I think that article is great. But I do think it misses an important point. And that point is that not only is independent publishing, the act of writing and publishing interesting editorial content, having a moment on the internet, but advertising technology for the supply side is really starting. The idea that software is available to publishers is coming into focus right now. There's a real evolution in the technology of products available to publishers. And that, is something that's new, I think, because Google and Facebook and these big, software first platforms were always collecting, aggregating, and normalizing these monster data sets, and then building interesting optimization algorithms on top of them. And then they had these enablement interfaces within their systems that allowed them to optimize for ad performance. Publishers weren't coming from that place. Publishers were coming from a place where producing interesting editorial content was their strongest muscle, and rightfully so. Advertising technology for them needed to catch up. And I think finally we're in a moment where the ability for publishers to aggregate, consolidate, and normalize data and then act on it is really going to be enabled in a way that hasn't been in the past. So I'm hopeful that not only is the time right for independent publishing on the web to make a comeback from an editorial perspective, but there's going to be new success because of the software platforms that are now available that weren't available previously in the previous generation of online publishing. So that's my general thesis, that online ad tech for publishers is going to hit an inflection point in having true software services and platforms available to them. And obviously that connects a little bit to what I'm here to demonstrate for the audience today, which is HTL BID. I believe that HTL BID is really one piece of the puzzle, the enablement piece of the puzzle. The idea that once you have the data, once you analyze the data, how do you act on the data? And for a long time, there's been a real disconnect between the publisher engineering department and the publisher ad ops department, or business people. And I would, suppose that this HTL BID platform is the missing bridge between those two platforms in order to enable the optimizations that the insights from all this, data analysis leads to.
Yeah, I think first of all, really interesting point, and I of course always love optimism in publishing and talking about that and how to move things forward. And I think you're right in terms of where focus is to where others have focused their energies. And if we could start to bring those things together in terms, again, like software solutions that do that. And again, you and I have talked and written about that bridge between operations and development being so key,
Yeah.
right? And the fact of the matter is those are two departments that talk two different languages, and have two different responsibilities, if you will, and trying to get the tools to help them align gets to be really, really kind of interesting.
And this brings up an interesting question too. Is like, does the publisher build these software solutions for themselves, or does it become more of a we'll subscribe to the right solutions that offer us this? And I think there's a long history of technology, being handled by the individual entity and then sort of centralizing around a few things that do it well. Not to get too, out ahead of myself here, but like electricity, right? Like corporations used to generate their own electricity. Now we have centralized electricity. Corporations used to manage all of their CRM, sort of functionality internally and build their own CRM. Now we have Salesforce.com. All publishers used to manage their own advertising technology, and now, is there going to be these sort of, platforms that give the publishers what they need in a more efficient way and allow them to optimize their business more effectively and less expensively? And so that's kind of, another part of that theory I just presented, which is like publishers aren't going to have to do it themselves. And that's always been a concern for publishing. Like, do we have the right resources not only to publish our primary product, which is the editorial and managing the content management system, but now we also have to deal with this, other sort of deep rabbit hole slash can of worms, which is advertising technology. And so, if you have systems to handle it for you in an efficient way, I think it makes sense that publishers can use them, and especially if they have that hallmark of true SaaS, which is really configurability, right? The idea that no one publisher is the same, and so offering them, something that they can kind of just bolt onto their website and doesn't behave exactly according to their business specifications is a bit of a challenge. But the nice thing about true software platforms is that they're highly configurable. So
Mhm.
offering publishers these capabilities that, but also them being highly configurable to their business requirements and needs.
And one of the things I think is underlying what you just said, and I'm certainly excited to kind of see the evolution since the last time that I've seen the product and dive into it. But I was just going to say that there's also a part of with the software approach of also, again, to, and I think you just alluded to this, of somewhat controlling your own destiny with it. Yes, you're going to use certain tools and certain ways, right? Again, there's no differentiator to build to do your own electrical plant at this point, to your point, right? Or redo entire CRMs like Salesforce, right? But there is a part of go instead of just saying, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to hand it to someone else, and then they're going to send me a check. That to me, many publishers are just never going to be there. They're not going to. They need to work the problem, if you will, because it's a part of what they do. Others won't, but like I think a majority of publishers want some level of control of saying, I want to make the decisions in terms of how my ad technology plays together, works together, and what the user experience is going to be. So,
Of course, and there's an amazing precedent here. I mean, it's Google Ad Manager, right? Formerly known as DFP. Google Ad Manager is a software system for publishers, and all of our ad ops colleagues are experts in using Google Ad Manager. So, their publishers like adopting things that work, and Google Ad Manager works. It delivers and prioritizes creatives and allows you to target creatives in a really effective, both from a technical perspective and from a cost perspective in a great way. Now, but publisher advertising technologies become so complex that Google Ad Manager doesn't do everything you need it to. Now you have to do header bidding. You have to figure out how to optimize for viewability. You have to, integrate consent signals into your ad requests. You have
mhm.
to do A/B testing. You have to do all of these different things. And Google Ad Manager doesn't do all of that. And so the question becomes, what tools do you build in order to enable those other enhancements you need to your advertising technology stack? And, again, that's kind of connected to what HTL BID is. But I do think, to your point, publishers and the people who work at them, they don't want to just turn everything over. They want to understand things more. They want transparency, and they want tools that they can configure to their business needs. It's just something like that hasn't really existed in publisher side ad tech yet. So, and I think HTL BID is a bit of a novel in that way, that it's highly configurable and does all the things that Google Ad Manager doesn't.
Well, let's see it. Again, it's been a while since I've kicked the tires, since we had our first impressions. So this is truly first impressions for me.
Yeah.
We didn't get a chance for me to sit there and review. So I'm going to turn things over to you, John. Why don't you walk to us through the product, and again, keep connecting the dots between why this is important.
Cool, will do, Rob. So hopefully you can see my screen now. Is that
Yes.
correct? All right, great. So what is HTL BID? And again, we did do a first impressions. I mean, previously, I think it was like in October of last year. So this is a newly designed user interface. It's more enterprisey, if you will. And we also have a lot more new features and functionalities. And so if someone watches the old one, now you can see what software progress looks like. So again, what is HTL BID for people who haven't heard of it, which is probably a lot of people, but maybe not. What is HTL BID? I would call HTL BID an enablement interface, or really relating to that Google Ad Manager, continuing with that Google Ad Manager concept. It's a platform that does the things for your ad stack that Google Ad Manager doesn't. And it's a complement to Google Ad Manager. It works in conjunction with Google Ad Manager. And so, especially at enterprise publishers, and really publishers of any size, a publisher of any size can use this platform. The question really just becomes, are the people at the publisher configuring it and deploying it, or are you using the #Lab sort of managed service to configure it and deploy it? But no matter who you are as a publisher, you can log in and see your current configuration. So this is basically, if I pull this down, you'll see a list of accounts, and then, you can add users, you can obviously log in, and very importantly, it's a multi-site management tool. So we understand the idea that not one size fits all in independent publishing. And so, if you have site A and site B, those two sites may have different ad configurations, and it totally accommodates that. And so, again, getting back into what HTL BID is, HTL BID is an enablement interface for ad tech changes, configurations, and optimizations. Anything you don't do in Google Ad Manager, you can do in here. So that includes things like making your ad units lazy load, putting refreshes on your ad units, adding pre-bid or Amazon header bidding, to your stack, adding anything related to pre-bid, which is like adding ad networks, changing timeouts, generating thousands of line items in your Google Ad Manager ad server in order to serve. This service does all of those things. And not only does it do those things for you, it's a platform for deploying those things and having a record of all of your changes. And the way that it technically works is, and this is really important for the implementation methods, is it understands your Google Ad Manager ad structure. So again, it's not replacing Google Ad Manager. It's essentially layering on top of it and enhancing your bid requests with all of the stuff that Google Ad Manager doesn't do out of the box. So really the first thing that you do when you sign up for the system is you configure, and again, just for everyone in the audience and who's ever watching this, if you want HTL to configure it for you, we were a services business for really the first 5 or 6 years of our history. We're an 8-year-old company now. And so a lot of our customers just have us go in there and use it for them the same way that we go into Google Ad Manager and use it for them. But, this idea that now ad operators who frankly may be better than even us as ad operators have their own platform for deploying changes that normally need to go through the engineering department, that's the innovation. So, again, so you could do this, we could do this, but you click into a site. This is the deployment page. So this is basically a history of all of the different ad tech changes that have been made on your website, which again, this, unfortunately for our industry is a bit of an innovation in the sense that like a lot of times this record only exists with on the individual developer's computer. Now we have a centralized place for everyone, whether it's an executive, the ad operator, the editor in chief, whatever, what have you, to log in and see who made what changes. The other great thing is that you actually deploy the changes from here. So if you ever, break something, not that anyone does that, you can just roll back and deploy the change here. So, this is also a deployment interface, but I'll come back to this concept. So in order to configure and have this system understand your Google Ad Manager setup, the first thing you do is you come to the ad configuration. And so in this ad configuration, this is where you essentially tie it to your Google Ad Manager account. So the first thing you do is you put in your GAN network ID. Our system will know to modify or retrieve ad units from this Google Ad Manager. So if you want to use our service and you already have Google Ad Manager set up, that's no problem. We totally accommodate that. You don't have to switch Google Ad Manager, Google Ad Manager accounts. You don't even have to change your Google Ad Manager ad unit structure. We fully accommodate whatever you have on the page, which I think, again, is a bit different than things that have existed before. So you plug in your Google Ad Manager ad network ID there, and then you come to the ad configuration. We have two implementation methods now. The second one, honestly, like obviously I'm biased, but it is so lightweight and so elegant. It is, I can't even believe I'm talking about publisher ad tech, to be honest with you. But I'll get into it. So the traditional implementation method is you put your Google Ad Manager ad unit here, and then basically you can modify that. So we know we're making a request to your Google Ad Manager account, and we're requesting this ad unit. And now this is where sort of our enablement interface comes in. And again, I'm using the term enablement as sort of a shortcut to talk about how you bridge the gap between the engineering department and the ad ops or business department. Because this is something like this size mapping feature, and we're upgrading this feature to be so much better in like 2 weeks. And I was almost canceled this first impressions demo because I wanted to be in there, but I said, what the heck, I'll just go with it. But basically, you define the viewports and the size mapping, and rather than just doing it in this interface, which isn't totally intuitive, we're going to have just like a different tab where you define the mobile viewport, the tablet viewport, and the desktop viewport, and then you just pick like mobile, tablet, desktop, and so it's more English human language. Right now, it's like from 0 to 768 show a 320 by 50, from 768 to 1024 show a 728 by 90, and above 1024 show these sizes. And for and this is kind of a code, like this comes with Google Ad Manager out of the box, the idea that you should only show creative sizes on certain screen widths, but it's something the developer needs to change in the code on page, and it doesn't even come out of Google Ad Manager. Like when you go to Google Ad Manager ad unit and like you generate the tag, it doesn't have size mapping in it. It's something that your development team needs to research and figure out how to implement. Then, like with HTL BID, you now have a human readable interface for changing that. So like, let's say you want to implement a rich media unit with a vendor like Clipcentric, and they're like, oh yeah, we can serve this sweet ad unit through a 1x1. And you're like, oh, well, my ad code doesn't have a 1x1 in it. Then you have to send it to the engineer, and the engineer has to add it, but the engineer's backed up. Well, no longer. You just type in 1x1 here, and now your ad code has the 1x1 in it, and it's that simple. And then you just click save and build, deploy the changes, and now the ad code is updated. And so, again, that's kind of the core innovation that's going on with HTL BID. There's a user interface for things that normally need code written, and size mapping is just one of those features.
Can I give you a scenario? So I'm assuming that, again, like I might want to treat my home page different than my article pages, different than my section heads and so forth. this is something where I get to manage it through this tool versus going to development, to the dev team and saying, you're going to have multiple instances of the ad code. And anytime I make a change that's universal, they would have to go in and make that change across multiple files. Here, I'm able to sit there and say, homepage, I want that 4x1 or 1x1 unit, but I don't want that on other pages or on other units. I
Correct.
kind of control that here. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
as long as the ads are already on the page, like you can control what sizes are accepted within those ads from here.
Understood. Yep. Makes sense.
So that's, I mean, and again, that's sort of, again, it's something that developers normally need to do, and you had to go through them. And now we have this sort of like system of record that memorializes it all and also gives non-coders the ability to do it if people want to do it. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, we don't want those people to deploy code, and so the engineers could do it in here too if they want, if that's kind of the case. And then we're also going to have a robust permissioning system come out soon too. Um, and again, this kind of talks to the nature that, or the idea that not all engineers are ad tech engineers. This is a new feature that we just came out with down here, which is called basically the CLS feature, but really it's limited CLS. So this idea that Core Web Vitals just came out from Google. If your page shifts, you get dinged in the algorithm. And so there's a solution which is like reserve the minimum height of the tallest ad allowed in that ad slot. That's something that your developers need to code out. With this system, it comes in the user interface. So like, right here, this is a perfect example. On desktop, we take a 970 by 90, a 728 by 90, and a 970 by 250. We're going to reserve the minimum height of 250 pixels. When the ad is smaller, we're going to justify it at the bottom. And then boom, now CLS is limited. We're reserving the minimum height. Your developers don't need to do anything. It's done. And so this speaks to one, the coding idea, like now there's a user interface for things that normally need to do code. But two, the idea that you need to stay on top of these industry trends in order to be up to date. And so like some publisher engineering departments might not be, thinking about this or there, or have the bandwidth, whatever. Now you're like, obviously because we're only thinking about advertising on the web for publishers, it's already in our system. And so, as we roll out features, we have system release notes and things like that. Like this feature was just released, probably 6 to 8 weeks ago now.
I needed it 6 to 8 weeks ago, just so you know. Like I see the benefit of this right
Yeah,
off the
gotta
bat.
get you on the system. That's
Yeah.
we'll do a follow up after this. Um, so yeah, so basically, you can do all the size mapping stuff, other cool, and so what we're looking at now is like add slot or add unit functionality. Other things you can do in here is you can toggle lazy loading on and off. You can set like when lazy loading should start. We have a refresh out of the box, viewable refresh, auto refresh. And this box down here kind of talks to our methodology or our thinking. Like if you don't want to use our refresh and you're working with, another plug for another friend of the company, Optimira, like if you're working with Optimira and you want to use their refresh, we're totally cool with that. Like obviously there's a commercial agreement that it goes along with the publisher being licensed to use the Optimira solution. But as long as the publisher has that Optimira solution, we'll build it in for you. And you can just enable the Optimira solution with the push of a button. And so, again, this is kind of a simple way to describe what this is a publisher specialty tag manager, right? So any technology that you want to implement on your website, you can implement here. And so if you want to implement the Optimira refresh instead of using our out-of-the-box refresh, that's totally fine. And so, that's basically how it works. At the ad unit level, you configure your ad units and then you add in this functionality. I'll give a little teaser to the implementation method that I was talking about that's like super crazy in my mind because I've been doing this for a while now. So like, as I mentioned, basically these HTL bid slots, like you basically name these, you can just name them after, the GAM ad unit. And then what happens is, you get these div IDs, and you basically put these div IDs, or really div classes, on your page, and
Hmm.
that invokes the settings that you have set here. But if you wanted to not use our div IDs, and again, just use your current Google Ad Manager infrastructure, and this is some random website. Like, honestly, I'm not sure who runs the ads on it or anything. I just went to it. This is our free tool, which I'll talk a little bit about the end, called HTL Debug, which
Hmm.
inspects the ad requests. Basically, all public knowledge, but we're just made, again, a user interface for people to read it. So the ad right here uses this div ID, div GPT ad MW2, right? So basically, if you just want to like add this functionality that I just went through, and not replace your Google Ad Manager divs, all you need to do now is just plug in the name of the div ID into the slot name, and now our script will be able to add all of this functionality to your current div ID. So, like, let's say you just had Google Ad Manager on the page and you didn't do the pre-bid development thing, you didn't have lazy loading, you would just put our one script in the header, and then we would just put your slot name, your div IDs from your Google Ad Manager code in here, and then you get the size mapping UI, you get the lazy loading UI, you get the and I haven't even gotten to the pre-bid stuff, but like you get all the monetization stuff. And so
That's like,
there's two implementation methods now. And again, it's a very light touch implementation method for this latest method that we're calling the imperative API method.
that is really cool. One question for you is in terms of its compatibility with CMS systems like WordPress.
Yeah, I mean, there's always something like this system. I think why it's unique is like it, one of the company's core values is flexibility, and then the word that I've been using, which may be a little less positive lately, but like, is accommodating. Like, this system really accommodates any setup. Like, is there some custom stuff that may need to be done if you're running a complicated React front end? Yes, but truth be told, we haven't had a scenario that we haven't been able to sort of accommodate.
Hmm.
And we've worked on some really complex stuff where there's thousands of GAM ad units, like, because like they're being programmatically generated based on like category or tag. React is particularly interesting when it comes to implementing ads on the front end, like the single page architecture. So we have, and like this is a platform built by an engineer who was doing ad tech across hundreds of websites. So this idea that accommodation is built into it is fine. And so, like, as long as you can run JavaScript, which frankly comes into play like in an environment like AMP or something, the system works. So you just have to be able to run JavaScript is basically
Got
it,
it.
which
Got
any
it.
CMS is complex.
Let's keep moving. I'm sure there's more things you want to show.
Yeah, so kind of got into the ad unit stuff. So, long story short, define your ad units. The system understands your ad units. And now you kind of get into the second part of the system, which is what technologies do you want to apply to those ad units? And that's where you come to this tech config tab, which is arguably kind of, you know, the heart or the meat and potatoes of the system. We have some really cool features, again, related to cumulative layout shift and kind of like some lightweight domain spoofing protection. So like hardcore engineering stuff, which is disable auto start. So right now, when you make requests, basically whenever the script loads, we now expose a function so you can load all of your content first. And then once you run our start function, it'll request all the ads. So that gives you an advantage on the time to interactivity feature on Google's Core Web Vitals. So you'll there's a couple of articles out about that now, and it's popular. So like out of the box, you get that with a simple function that's exposed comes with it. Another cool feature is like authorized domain. So when you're getting those emails from Google and they're like, so good CDN is like running your ads, you can just come here and you can basically whitelist specific domains for the ad request. So like, if you just want to do demo 2021 and stage.demo2021.com, like, you can put those things in there. So, basically limit the ad requests coming from domains that aren't yours. So that's like a lightweight spoofing tool. Again, even for the hardcore engineers out there, if you need some custom functionality that needs to have code written, we have these like CSS and JS editors in here too. So you can run custom code from within the build. So again, it kind of just becomes this centralized system of record for all of your advertising technology. So you can figure out what's been deployed when, what's doing what. It's not a disparate thing that's all over the place anymore. And then, so those are our hardcore tech features. In terms of header bidding, you can do Amazon. Amazon out of the box is pretty simple. So basically, all they allow you to do to configure is plug in your publisher ID. So that's similar methodology, plug and play. We compile all the Amazon code and we just use your pub ID. An important thing here, and a common question is like, well, do we use your Amazon account? This is a publisher talking, and like, do we use HTL's Amazon account or do we use our own Amazon account? And again, this is a core innovation of this service, which is you can pick. Like, if you want to use our Amazon account because you don't have the relationship with them and you don't want to spend cycles on the biz dev, we're more than happy to use ours. We have a good relationship with them. If you have your own and you want to collect the money directly from them and all that sort of stuff, plug in your Amazon ID. It's the same code other than the ID. Similarly, pre-bid. So, again, we have the messages there. We just click pre-bid. So we enable pre-bid and we come back to the header bidding. And now we have a full service header bidding interface. Again, this is, there's similar products out there like, header bidding. Basically, pre-bid is a code package that developers can manipulate. Other products out there exist that are pre-bid interfaces. We have one built into the system. So these are all the global settings. You can pick what version you want to load. If you pick default, as we upgrade the default version, you come along with it. You can change the timeouts. As I mentioned, there's a full line item generation service. So like, a lot of times when you talk to publishers, they're like, we don't even have our pre-bid orders broken out by SSP, which really limits the Google Ad Managing reporting capabilities. With our service, we have a full line item generator that you can, you can define the price granularity, which is the line items, and you can deploy it from here. So if you ever, sign up a new SSP, boom, your line items are ready to go. Pre-bid ID groups, and again, obviously the technology here is fascinating and amazing, but I also think like a big part of why the platform is valuable is because of the industry knowledge inherent in the platform. And what I mean by that is, when you plug in your IDs, and I actually need to show you the load sheet feature. And am I going long? Are we good? Should I keep going?
You're good. You're good.
And so basically what I was talking about with the industry knowledge is like all of these adapters have different syntaxes when you plug them into pre-bid. And so for AppNexus, we need a placement ID. And then you have a list of all of the adapters here. So like, if you pick Concert, if you want to run Vox's Concert, you need a partner ID from them. Whereas like when you pick Rubicon, now Magnite, you need an account ID, a site ID, and a zone ID. When you pick Index, you need a site ID, and that's it. And so like that sort of industry knowledge is inherent in here. And I think that's really where a lot of breakdown occurs, in my opinion, is like the engineers are obviously smart enough to know how to do this stuff. Yeah. It's just that like there's a lot of weird wonkiness and things where it's like domain expertise actually is more important than being a super talented engineer. The super talented engineers, are probably frustrated a lot of times because they're like, why are we doing it this way? And it's like, that's the way the money works. Like, yes. Sorry. But,
yep.
And so like this platform, yes, it's a great technology platform, but it has a ton of that industry knowledge built into it too, which is, I think, where a lot of the value is. And so what I was mentioning before is like, not only can you plug in your IDs here, and can it be like a really effective ID management solution, one of the most annoying, for lack of a better word, things to do is like build those load sheets for publishers, build the load sheets for SSPs rather. And this always happens. Like I download the sheet and like all these Excel documents open. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But okay, great. I opened the right one. So basically, what I'm talking about is like so. Obviously, we want to run multiple SSPs in our pre-bid configuration. The next step in that is like the SSPs are like, okay, what IDs should we give you? What are your placement names? What sizes are accepted? And how do we break that out? You have to go through everything and build it. But the great thing about HTL BID is it understands your ad units, your slots, and your viewport sizes. So you can come back to the ad configuration and you can just download a, a programmatic load sheet for the SSP. So you can be like, all right, load the concatenated pre-bid ID group, which is just a collection of like the ad unit and the viewport, and the size is accepted. If the SSP allows multi-size requests, then you can display all slots in one row, all sizes in one row. If the SSP requires a separate ID for each creative size, then you can display all slots in separate rows. And then you download this, and then that brings up what I was showing you, which is this sheet right here, which is essentially the document. We would transfer this to a Google sheet probably, and then you just add placement ID here. But now you have all of your pre-bid ID group names, and it's like including, and this is kind of, this medium means like screen width or screen size, large, and all the sizes accepted, and then the SSP just goes in and fills that out. We basically programmatically import that into HTL BID, and now all of your IDs are in the platform automatically. You don't have to have a developer punch them in individually, or have somebody punch them in individually. So like this is really, and that gets to like what I feel like this solution is, primarily, which is like a workflow platform. Like, it's a workflow solution. There's a lot of really weird and wonky workflows in ad ops, and this platform kind of like brings it all together and unifies it. So
Yeah, you've used the term advertising like management system before, right? Like as a CMS, but just with ads. I think that feels that way to me, right? It really feels that way.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean I think that's a great analogy. Ad management platform I've been playing with, but the initial thing is ad management system. Just like you need a content management system, which gives editors a user interface for publishing a headline, a body, and a photo, like ad operators need a management system. And this system, along with Google Ad Manager, is that comprehensive stack that you
Yeah.
need to configure things. So we did pre-bid. And then, once you get past the monetization technology, as I was mentioning, and ultimately we can run any header bidding service in here. If you want to work with one, that you have a commercial relationship with and you still want to use this tag manager, we're totally cool with that. Doing things like, sellers.json and Amazon S-Chain, that's all in here. Consent management platform configuration. So, we're only really responsible for the pre-bid settings. So like, depending what you're doing with a consent management platform, we can accommodate anything and passing those consent signals downstream. If you want to put any sort of analytics into pre-bid, that kind of comes out of the box with that plug and play, method to it, where you just come in and you plug in your Rockstop publisher ID. You get enhancements like only run it on 10% of the traffic, if you want, and then all these others are all, I think 19 pre-bid identity modules are in here. So if you want to implement LiveRamp, ATS, or anything like that, you can do it through this platform. Ad quality solutions like Confiant, and Ad Lightning, and even ad block recovery like Blockthrough. These are all services that if the publisher has a relationship with them, or if they want to use our accounts, we can enable through this interface. And again, it's just this plug and play methodology where you just plug in your pub ID, we compile all of the code for you, and then we run it. So so that's basically the tag manager aspect. Those are the two major things. One, configure your ad units and your ad unit functionality. Two, pick what technologies you want to load and run against those ad units. Once you do that, you now have basically built an ad tech version, or in our system parlance, a revision. And so then you click save and build, and what you get is basically it comes back, it'll say building, and then you put in whatever you wanted to do there. I mean, I can do one thing quickly. So like let's just do add configuration. This leaderboard large is right now using an auto refresh for 30 seconds. Obviously, auto refresh isn't great today because it's going to refresh the ad whether it's on screen or not. So we want to change that to a 30-second viewable refresh. So we just change that right there. We click
Mhm.
save and build. You always have to list what you do. And so I'm going to say change refresh to viewable on leaderboard large slot. You save that. Now you see a new version was created, and now basically the build is pending. Once it's done, you'll get a deploy button here, and then you can deploy it to staging environment only, production only, or both.
Wow.
And so you kind of have this like nice enterprise grade deployment system where you can pick what environment you deploy the 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 changes to. And the other really cool thing too is like let's say you do one version with A/B test or one version with lazy loading and one version without lazy loading. You can pick what percentage you want to load the different versions at. So it enables A/B testing in a really nice way too. Um,
Very
and
cool.
that is basically it.
I was
How.
gonna, I was about to ask you, I'm like, I wanted to kind of start to wrap up, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot to this. It makes a lot of sense. Again, and I, as someone that's worked with wonderful development teams, but ad technology was not their first focus. And I think you really kind of worded it really well. Like, we bring a lot of mess to it. Again, if you're a developer, you work with tools that are built with you in mind. None of this is built with developers in mind. Like, or ad tech isn't built with the developer on at
Right.
the end as the end user, right? So I think that it really kind of brings that together, and just managing that. And yeah, a couple things going on today. So there's this solution. You also have your Chrome extension, which I think most of our audience knows about. We know you've done that's done really well in terms of people picking up on that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. If you want to
great.
sign up, I can just do a quick plug. If you want to sign up for that, again, it's this Chrome extension that sort of shows you the different. If you have access to the Google Ad Manager account, you just click on that and it opens up the Google Ad Manager account. Like the timing, it shows you like the life cycle events and the timing of each one. If there's slot targeting, that's available. Page targeting shows you the pre-bid auction. This is kind of like the neatest thing. Like it shows you all of the responses from the different networks in pre-bid and the price that they bid, and then what your consent management platform signals are. And
Yeah.
yeah, and if you want to sign up, right? If you want to sign up, all you need to do is just plug in the email that you're logged into Chrome with here. It's a private Chrome extension, and you'll get it.
Yeah, it's useful. And again, I've seen some people really rave about it. So congrats on that. That has
Right.
been a great addition to the world. In terms of people wanting to talk to you more about HTML bid, though, what or HTL bid, sorry, I added the M. HTL bid, who should they talk to, or what should they do next?
Yeah, I mean, just email me basically. My email is john at hashtag hyphen labs labs.com. Just email me. I'm doing most of the demos these days. I can link you with my team if you have like specific technical questions or things like that. But yeah, just email me. It's pretty
Great.
simple these days.
John, thank you so much for this. Really enjoyed seeing this and seeing the evolution of it. Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.